Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. Got my Donner reindeer mug today. He's lifting. I love it so much. And I got a latte from my local coffee shop. Today's video is going to be my December reading wrap up. I'm trying to get this filmed before I go on a trip. So, I need to get some stuff done. I have like a bunch of stuff going on in January, so this needs to happen right now. So, let's just get into it. There are lots of books in my December reading wrap up because I read a ton of contemporary Christmas romances or just contemporary Christmas books in December because I think it's really fun. It's kind of like watching Hallmark movies. So there's going to be a lot of them, but I'm going to try to not stay on each one too much because there's only so much that can be said about them. But the first one that I read was actually on a whim. It was not anticipated in my TBR video. It wasn't planned, but it was available, and a lot of the ones I wanted to read weren't available. They had like really long waits and it took forever to get any of them. It sounded fun, and I've never read a hockey romance. So I went with this one. It's called Holiday Hostilities by Katie Bailey, and it's the Cyclones Christmas Book 2. So I might read the first one as well. But this is cute. You're following a girl who is a flight attendant. She flies all over the world, and she doesn't really like Christmas because her and her brother have a poor relationship with her family, and Christmas has always just kind of been a point of contention for them with their parents. So they've kind of like, she's boycotted it, and her brother are really close, but that's kind of it. And her brother is on this hockey team called the Cyclones, and I believe they're in Georgia, Atlanta. And she finally moves back to Atlanta. Her brother's playing on this hockey team, and he has a new girlfriend, and so she's kind of just feeling like trying to figure out where she fits in all of this. And her brother has this best friend that's also on the Cyclones. It's the team captain, Aaron. And they've kind of been at odds with each other for a very long time because he's his brother's best friend. So they've been around each other for years. And after them both being teenagers, she's coming back now as an adult. And as teenagers, they were kind of friends, got along a little bit, and now they're kind of enemies because when they were teenagers, he showed interest in her and then kind of ghosted her, and it hurt her a little bit. So they've been kind of like enemies ever since, and they banter back and forth kind of viciously and tease each other, which is fun. I do that with my brother's best friends, but not in that way. Lo and behold, he may have feelings for her, and events ensue. But this was a cute holiday vibe. This was the holiday vibe I wanted. Before this, I had started A Merry Little Meet Cute and DNF'd it because I was like, this is not what I want right now. I don't like it. I didn't like it. I started it because I heard really good things about it. Was not what I wanted. This was. And this was also, like I said, my first hockey romance, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was done well. I liked the writing. I will probably continue to follow this series if the author puts out more books in it. I will say the switch from her hating Aaron to liking Aaron seemed a little bit quick, but I kind of get it because she just had to be exposed to him for a longer period of time now that she lives in the same area and is there with her, like supporting her brother's career, which is inadvertently his career. But also part of it, of her changing her mind, was due to him showing up and showing her with his actions that he wasn't who she thought he was. So I liked it. It was really cute. I enjoyed the banter. I enjoyed how he takes care of her and how he kind of just shows up and teases her, but also really nice and supportive when she needed him to be. So I liked that. The next book I read was Anne of Avenue A, and this is for The Love of Austin book 3. And I think these are all kind of Jane Austen retellings, and I think this one was Persuasion. So 8 years ago, Anne Elliot broke Freddie Wentworth's heart when she refused to give up her 5-year plan for the sake of adventure. But despite big dreams, Anne, now 30, is still living at home with hardly a plan in sight. So her and this guy are dating at the beginning of the book 8 years ago. And they're in college, they're about to graduate, they both get accepted into different programs. And this creates some contention, and she decides that she's not gonna follow him to his dream of living in another country and doing this like program that he got accepted into. And they kind of break up instead of dealing with the situation. And she goes to work for this like firm, and she ends up hating it and kind of trying to find a different job and isn't sure what she wants to do, which I feel like a lot of us can relate to at this point. 8 years pass, he comes back, and he is living in her apartment building with her, and they have to cross paths and deal with each other and deal with this animosity and kind of have this like potentially second chance romance. And I really liked this one also. It was cute. The pacing did seem a little strange to me. I remember thinking that when I read it, the pacing seemed off. But I wasn't necessarily mad about it. It just, I noticed it. And also, it took a long time for them to reignite, but I appreciated the story and the attempt at being selfless. I did like that the characters had to deal with the what do you want to do question and wrestling with that and wrestling with, you know, corporate world versus like doing your own thing. I appreciated those themes and the career questions and just still trying to figure everything out even in your 30s, which is okay. I always kind of hate miscommunication or like it's hard because there's situations where you withhold things from people because you don't want them to make decisions based off of you, but also you need to communicate. So that is a theme in this, but I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know if I said this about Holiday Hostilities. I also gave that one 4 stars. And then I read 5 Gold Rings by Kristen Bailey. This was cute. Essentially, you're following somebody who is dating this guy very seriously, and she comes home unexpectedly because she gets off work or something, and he is cheating on her with somebody else. And this is like the week before Christmas, or no, days before Christmas. So her mental state and emotional state just kind of spirals out of control, and she ends up going to work, which she works part-time in this jewelry store, kind of breaking down and saying everything. And the people that she works with find out that there were 5 rings that were misdelivered to wrong locations, and they're all like proposal related. So she decides with her and her coworker Joe that they're gonna go and they're gonna deliver these rings to all of these people to save other people's relationships and engagements, even though I think she was gonna get engaged at their Christmas party, but obviously their relationship's over. So there's this cute adventure where they go and they meet all of these different couples and get into antics in all of them, and it's kind of silly and funny and ridiculous, the situations they get themselves into, but it's cute. And then you find out towards the beginning of the book that Joe actually has a crush on her, but he knew that she was taken, and so now she's not taken, but he's like, how do I approach this delicately? How do I navigate this as well? So it was cute. I liked it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It was silly and funny. I liked the adventures that they had with each delivery and just the wild things that happened. The emotional roller coaster that this book was, and that they had to face those emotional roller coasters and work through them. I liked it. And then I read Elf Against the Wall by Alina Jacobs, the Winter Brothers series, book 2. And I had a love-hate relationship with this book. I was really excited about this one. This is one of the top ones I wanted to read for my TBR. But it was ridiculous and hilarious, which I liked. But also hard to read at times because you just feel so bad for the female main character because of how horribly she's being mistreated by her family. But it was also raunchy and in a way that I didn't appreciate and didn't like and didn't want. Not what I want in these books usually anyway, but this one in particular was just like over the top, and it was like they were trying to have shock value in the way that they talk to each other to embarrass each other. But I didn't like it. You're following a girl who she thinks she's dating this guy, and he comes over for Christmas and she kisses him because she thinks they're dating, to find out that he's actually her sister's fiance. And apparently they don't talk about anything about this. So she's labeled a homewrecker, and the guy that she was with twists the whole story saying that she was harassing him at work. They work together, and says he never wanted anything to do with her and never had a relationship with her. Lies. And she's kind of blacklisted for careers and all kinds of stuff. So it's really awful how unfair it is. She kind of, to figure out the situation, she hires one of the Winter Brothers, who's this like bad boy tattooed person, has a motorcycle, to help her investigate to see if she can prove that this is a lie, and also to kind of get back at her family. So her family thinks that she's dating this guy who's a family enemy, to kind of get back at them, and she kind of is, but also she's doing it to try to uncover the truth and show them the truth. So it's ridiculous, it's hilarious, it's kind of raunchy and weird. If that had been toned down quite a bit, I think I would have really liked it. But I will say the book is basically worth it for Grandma Doyle. She was the best character, and she was so funny. I laughed so many times at Grandma Doyle. Other than that, it was an okay story. I felt the characters' relationships weren't developed enough. It felt like the transition from hate to love was really out of nowhere. And it wasn't like this situation happened and it makes sense. It just really felt out of nowhere. So I gave that one 3 stars. And then it also, in the audiobook, it attached the short story, so I'm counting that one as well, as Elf Builds a Shelf, the Winter Brothers book 2.5. This is just like a it was cuter and sweeter than the full book before this, but following the same 2 characters. So it was cute. I liked that one, 3 stars. And then I read Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh, which is one I've been wanting to get to for a long time, and I loved it. I actually gave it 5 stars. In this story, you're following 2 characters who, over 10 years, take the same flight to Dublin, home from Chicago to Dublin, over Christmas. And they are on the same flight every year for 10 years. And they're like best friends, but they really only interact on these flights. And they will like message each other a little bit other times, but it's really just on these flights that they truly hang out and interact. And it's so precious. I loved the friendship dynamic. It is like a friends to lovers situation, but I loved the friendship dynamic because if you ignore the rest of the book, it does feel like a situation where you can see just them just being friends. I loved the way it was written. It's really funny. They are dating other people at times. They give each other Christmas gifts. They have these funny adventures in the airport. I really liked it. And in this one, everything's kind of going wrong. Like there's a huge storm, so their flights are delayed. And they decide they're just going to stay home in Chicago for Christmas. But then her coworker says, like, I can get you on flights and you can do this. You can go to this other Chicago airport. You can go to, I think it's Buenos Aires. And then we can get you to London, and then we can get you to Ireland. And it's like this whole extravagant bonanza of travel where they won't sleep, but they decide to do it to get him home for Christmas. And this was well worth the hype that I had heard of this book. It was super cute. I loved the way it was written. The friendship the characters have was funny, and I liked that we got to see their flashbacks. So you get to see the flashbacks of the 10 years, like the other flights they have together, how their friendship developed, and then they end up in Ireland. So it's in Ireland, and I love Ireland. So they're in Ireland and they get to see each other's families for Christmas. And it's really funny also, just like all the situations, all the friends, all the family. It was so good. I loved it. It does always feel kind of weird to me reading cute little Christmas books as 5 stars because I'm like, they're not all the same, but it's like a very similar trope. But I loved it, and I just did. So much so that I actually got the second one snowed in, and I will read that one as well, but I didn't get to it in December. And then I read My December Darling by Lauren Asher. This is a pretty short read, but it was really cute. I also really loved this one. Part of the Lakefront Billionaire series, or like, it's the author of that, and it's a similar vibe, I think. So the situation on this one is kind of strange. The main character, Catalina, her sister is getting married, and her sister is getting married to Catalina's ex-boyfriend. So the ex-boyfriend, the sisters are okay with this, but the ex-boyfriend and Catalina dated for a little while, but they never really got serious, and then they just kind of decided they weren't for each other. But then her sister and him fell in love, and they're getting married, and so it's already kind of weird with the tension of that. Even if everyone's okay with the situation, it's weird. And then the ex-boyfriend's best man, Luke, is interested in Catalina. And Catalina's like, nope, you're off limits because you're my ex-boyfriend's best friend, and that's weird. But because they're in this wedding together, they have to interact with each other, and then the sister and the brother kind of play a little bit of matchmaker, and it's really sweet. They build Legos together. He's a doctor and she's a nurse, a traveling nurse. And they bond over coffee and they bond over Legos. There's a gingerbread building competition. Like, this whole vibe was just perfect, and I loved it. Also gave this one 5 stars. It was so cute and fun. I liked the romance and the dynamics a lot. I really liked the thoughtfulness of the main male character, Luke. I feel like that set him apart a little bit as far as love interests. And the Legos were such a cute addition. I loved that part. And then I read Good Spirits by B.K. Borison, book 1 in the Ghosted series. This one you're following Harriet, who is suddenly visited by this ghost of like Christmas past, basically, Nolan. And his whole job is to go to people that are horrible and then go into their past and show them why they're horrible. which is just such a strange thing. And it's like she can change her ways, and if she doesn't, she's gonna go down a bad path. But the whole time, they're not really sure what's going on because she's kind of a really sweet person, kind of like people walk all over her. And every time they go back into a memory, it's nothing bad about her, but it does show her being mischievous or having like a really traumatic past and how people treat her poorly. And things kind of go from there. So the magic is interesting because he's a ghost, but he's tied to her until they figure this out. And he can teleport her back into the past, but then they also start visiting his past. And things get tangled and weird, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. This was also really good. I liked that this is kind of B.K. Borison's, as far as I'm aware, first delve into like a more fantastical element, and I really, really liked it. It's a really interesting take on the Ghost of Christmas Past as well, and like the Scrooge situation. I liked this story a lot and found it a unique and magical Christmas story, Christmas romance. When I first heard about this, I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea that Nolan, the main male character, was a ghost. I thought they were just like comparing him to a ghost. Because it's B.K. Borison, I wasn't expecting it to be fantastical. And then I was like, oh, he's actually a ghost. So that was funny. But I enjoyed this festive read and how well it was written. I've enjoyed this author's work so far with everything I've read from her. I think First Time Caller is still my favorite, but this is definitely up there. And I look forward to more books in this series because she did announce the next one is following a Grim Reaper. And I gave this one 4 stars. And then I read The Christmas Wager by Holly Cassidy. In this one, there's a girl that works at a firm, and she's sent to kind of convince this older man to sell his Christmas like ornament shop. It's kind of in a way that's undercutting him. So they're basically trying to cheat him. They're trying to offer him less than what it's worth so that she can buy it, so she can impress her boss and get promoted in the company. But the grandson kind of comes in, and his parents are dead, so it's just him and his grandfather. And so the grandson comes in and he's like, absolutely not. You're not selling. You're not cheating him of this, whatever. And she's desperately trying to get this sale so she can impress her boss. That's awful. And so they enter into this Christmas wager that if she competes in another team against the grandson and wins, then he'll accept her original offer. If the grandson wins, she'll pay, I think it's like $125,000 or something. So it's kind of fun. It's very unrealistic, but it's fun. And so they enter into these like crazy Christmas competitions, and they decide to tell everyone that she's his family friend and they've been friends for a long time instead of explaining the situation. So people are kind of suspicious of her a little bit. But she goes through these competitions, and it's a really fun story. They get closer in the midst of this, and she starts to wonder if this is what she wants, and if she thinks that maybe they don't need to sell the shop, or that they need to offer him more. And she's kind of butted against the corporate world in that as well. So I really liked this one. It was cute. I liked the Christmas games a lot and the small town vibes. It's kind of Gilmore Girl-esque. The corporate greed was annoying, but a catalyst and can definitely be spot on for some companies and frustrations that a lot of people have with the corporate world. One of my gripes is that I wish the dog had more of a role in the book because he's got a shepherd. But it was cute. I enjoyed it. 4 stars. And then I finally read A Soul as Cold as Frost by Jennifer Crope. This is book 1 in the Winter Souls trilogy. Or I'm sorry, series. There's more than 3 books. It's really hard to describe this book. There's a girl who's wandering around her town, and then she ends up seeing these people and creatures that apparently nobody else can see. And one of them runs up to her and gives her this magical orb. And they tell her basically to protect it, and they can't give it away, and they have to be careful and be safe with it and make like good choices. And she's like, what the heck are you talking about? And then she starts seeing more and more things of the world. She's trying to like give it to people of this world, and they're like, you cannot give this to me, like you have to hide it, you can't talk about it. And she ends up on this quest with this boy that's kind of like similar to Jack Frost. He's got these like abilities. He's got this like I think it's a candy cane staff that he can shoot ice and stuff out of. She ends up going on this adventure with him, and they're trying to get this orb to where it needs to be because there's an evil queen who's like a witch and evil forces, and they're looking for her, and it's adventurous. They're constantly on the run. It's very fun. It is super atmospheric and very wintry. There's snow, there's Christmas stuff. There's a lot of characters based on Christmas or winter mythology or lore. Really fast adventure, and it's very fun and tense, and like a lot of stuff is going down, and there's a lot of magic. but also silly and funny. I really liked this. I think Welcome to Fae Cafe is still, that series is still my favorite, but I'm looking forward to continuing this one since there's 4 books in it. I liked how this was a wintry Christmas fantasy. I feel like I don't get a lot of those. And it's fun to read during the holidays or just during winter. Like, I loved the time frame when I was reading it. I liked the themes a lot and hope the plot kind of thickens a little bit more when more of the world is unveiled in the next books, because I think she's going to go to the different lands. But I ended up giving this 3 stars. And then I read The Christmas Book Hunt by Ginny Cooligan. This is kind of a short story, but I really liked it. You're following a girl who her grandmother is ill and going downhill fast, and I think she's becoming terminally ill and she doesn't have a lot of time left. And her wish is that she can find this book that her father had read to them when they were kids. And so the granddaughter is, oh no, it's her great aunt, excuse me. It's her great aunt, and she is desperately trying to find her great aunt this book, and she goes on this book hunt to try to find it before Christmas and before her great aunt can get any worse, and finds out that it's actually this extremely rare book and impossible to find. And so she goes on this like huge journey. I say huge, but it's just like, it's very intense because she's desperately trying to track down this book and it's impossible to find. So she's going to like rare booksellers and she's going into all these places and getting leads occasionally and then following those leads to see what happens. And it's really heartwarming and cute, but there's also like mean people that are after this book for financial gain because the book itself existing as a rumor. And so they're like, if she finds this book, somebody else has to get it because it'll be worth so much money. And it's a pretty, like I said, it's a short story, so it goes really fast, but it was really fun. And there's a guy that joins her on the journey for a lot of it, and he's working for this bookseller that works with rare books, and that guy is bad. And so he's like, you have to find this book before she does and take it from her, basically. So she's trying to find her great aunt this book, and it's a very cute story, and I liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Such a cute little short story about trying to hunt down a rare book for her sick relative. What more could you want? And then I read Wreck My Plans by Jillian Meadows. In this, you're following somebody who, their whole family, they have a family dynamic, and they had this guy that was in foster care kind of grow up with them, and so it's her brother's best friend, but he's 10 years older than the main female character. And he's always kind of had a thing for her. So he was 29, she was 19, but he didn't do anything about it because he knew, he was like, you're a lot younger than me, you're my best friend's sister, so we can't do anything. So he, like, dealing with all of this, decides to leave, and he finally comes back for Christmas because he thinks that she's not going to be there, and then she is. And at this point they're 39 and 29, and things go from there. They have to deal with their issues, and they potentially develop this romance. I gave this 2.5 to 3 stars. I liked the beginning of this, but after a while, it felt like it went downhill. I liked it okay, but I wish it had been more slow burn and more about dealing with things. Some of it felt fast and just kind of spicy, and I like to have a little bit more depth with those things. So I feel like this had a lot of potential, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do, and it didn't do what I liked. So, wasn't necessarily for me, but it wasn't bad. And then the last book that I was able to read right in the nick of time in 2025 was Grace and Henry's Holiday Movie Marathon by Matthew Norman. This book was actually really good. You're following Grace and Henry, who both of them a year prior lost their spouses. One of them to sickness, one of them to a plane crash. And so those experiences are very separate, but they're both dealing with this like grief and the things that come with losing a spouse. And it's really interesting because they're both in their like late 30s, early 40s. And the themes that are dealt with this and grief and just all of the things was really good. So they both lost their spouses, and their parents are kind of trying to set them up because they try to set them up with anyone. And in the midst of that, they just end up kind of becoming friends and realize that they can talk to each other about this grief that other people just don't understand, but they do. And so they decide that they're going to talk to each other about it sometimes. They don't do it all the time. It's not like they hang out a lot. But then they decide to kind of on a whim every so often watch these holiday movies together, because he did that with his late wife and she kind of did that a little bit with her late husband. And so they start watching these holiday movies, and she has 2 kids, he has no kids, and he starts getting to know their kids and kind of developing friendships with them as well. And there's also this like side plot with mice that will make sense if you read the book. But this was really good. It deals with grief and healing and coming to terms with the not so simple emotions and thoughts that emerge from grieving and dealing with a life that doesn't look like how you thought it would look, and how to start finding things that make you happy in the midst of all of that, in the midst of disappointment and your life getting derailed. I loved how sweet and funny and deep this book was, how grieving and emotions are complicated and messy, how healing isn't always pretty and can look a lot of different ways. I liked that it wasn't just sad, but it was hopeful and funny and a little silly at times. Plus the banter around holiday movies was a lot of fun. Perfect book to end the year on. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 5 stars. I think if it sounds interesting to you, you should give it a shot. I think it's beautifully written. That's the last one that I read in December. I would love to know your favorite read of December, but if you aren't sure, leave me a Christmas tree emoji, even though it's January. But that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.